It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take 5, it's the 5-minute edition of Take Command, and we're going to try to squeeze a roster projection at offensive line into 5 minutes. Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman, usual host of this podcast. You know,
the usual host.
Yeah, you never know. One day, someone else might show up.
That is true.
Hopefully, it's because we're on vacation. And it's not because they fired us. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Who do we got making this Commanders roster at O-line? We obviously did a much larger breakdown in the full edition of the pod yesterday. But Logan, Leno, check.
Yes.
Sadiq, check. Gates,
Yep.
check. Cosme, check. Wiley, check. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, so I think the obvious one for me is Chris Paul. I mean, he's just done a really good job. He's been working at both guard spots, so he feels like your swing guard, right? So let's write Chris Paul here.
And then Cornelius Lucas after him. Swing tackle, check.
He's been awesome. Okay, so that's 7. And I think those guys definitively deserve it. Those are the best 7. Now, the guy that I think we talked about a lot on the main pod was Stromberg. I think he has just come on at a really nice way at the right time, showing he can play both center and guard, which I don't think is a good sign for Larson. I love Larson. I think he's had a great preseason so far, but I think the flexibility and the dynamic ability to play guard, at least so far, it's only been for like a week basically, but I think he's the guy that I would have to say is playing his way into a larger role in this offense. You worded that really nicely earlier.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and I think that's also like a good thing for roster construction because can you keep your numbers to a minimum with some backup guys on the practice squad while keeping maximal position flexibility? It's Ron's favorite thing, especially on the O-line, for good reason. Because if you keep Stromberg, you now have 2 backup guards and a backup center, so that's 3 positions in 2 players. That is good because that allows you to keep a 7th receiver or 4th tight end or 4th running back or whatever, and that 4th or 5th whatever else is going to be a special teams player. So that's really helpful and beneficial for roster construction. Braeden Daniels, other rookie, 4th rounder. Where are we at on him?
You think he's on there? So he's a guy that to me is like he's Ari Kwanjo when I was here. Ari Kwanjo was drafted in the 3rd round. Great
dude, by the way.
Awesome guy. And pretty good football player, but like wasn't ready when he got drafted here, and basically like redshirted his first year. So he's active. He's on the 53, but he's inactive every single game day, and that bothered me early on in the process because I felt like he was not playing well. But I do think Braeden Daniels is playing better and showing signs of life. Like he's not ready to play NFL football yet, but maybe in 8, 9, 10 weeks. He continues to develop and is there. I think because he's your 4th round draft pick, you kind of got to go that way. I mean, what do you think about that, Craig? Yeah,
I think that's 100% correct.
Yeah.
I think, and I honestly I don't have a huge problem with that. If there's one guy on your roster that you're redshirting, if they had done it with both dudes, if Stromberg wasn't ready and Daniels wasn't ready, it's like what? Who was scouting the O-line and why were they allowed to do that? But if it's just Daniels, someone's got to be inactive on game day. And I realize you want those spots for injured guys and you like all your healthy players, but hopefully that's not an issue that you have every single inactive spot filled with an injured player, that you can afford a couple of healthy scratches. And at that point, take the upside swing and I'm fine with it. Not ideal. You wish you'd draft a guy in the 4th round, especially on this team that could help you. But I think he makes it because he's a 4th rounder, and that's that. So that gets us to how many? We're at 9 now?
That's 9 right there. And I don't know, did they keep 10 last year?
So I'd have to go back and check. I do not have that on me. But I think the other guy that's worth mentioning, but there's a couple other guys that deserve shout-outs, right? Like Mason Brooks had a good camp early, especially got a lot of love. Montero's been great and is a really interesting guy because he's played very well at guard and has played tackle for them in the past. But Trent Scott came in to this preseason game and played very well with the ones at right tackle.
He's had a good camp also. It's funny. He's a guy that he's technically very sound. He's a little undersized, but he's consistent. And he's not going to hit it out of the park every time. He has some in one-on-ones, you know what I mean? He's got some where he's just physically outmatched, right? But I think he's a good football player. The question is how good of a football player is he? Because they seem to be very guard heavy. They've got Charles, Chris, Cosme, Ricky, right? That's 4 guys. I don't think you keep another guard. So I think that's a great point.
So Larson's cooked.
I kind of feel I love Larson. He's a great guy. He's a good football player. It just, if I'm looking at this, do you keep 3 centers on? No, right? You just can't do it. I think Ricky's the guy. And so to me, I look at it and I say, Daniels can't play tackle in a pinch. Can Chris play tackle? I don't think you want that to happen. So do you keep Foster just as a guy who...
Or Scott, you mean?
Scott, excuse me,
yeah.
As a guy who can play both. He can play both tackle spots. And so you say, in terms of value at the moment, I would say that's probably the way I would go. And then you keep 10.
I think if you keep 10, that's probably the play. I think the question then becomes, like, do you keep Montero instead as someone who's played some guard for you and done a really good job in camp, but also has played tackle? Like, if he's your 4th emergency tackle, but also gives you another option at guard, there's that position flex. The good news is I think both those guys can get the practice squad. I do not think either one of them is going to be signed. Like, would other teams be very happy to have either one of them in their practice squad? Sure, but I don't think there's another team out there that's going to be clamoring to get either one of those guys on the practice or on their active roster, which means you can probably get them through and maybe just operate with 9 and hopefully have both those guys in reserve. And if you have to call them up on a Saturday night, you call them up on a Saturday night.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I forgot at least is, like, Cosme is a serviceable tackle. So if you need to, like, bump Chris into right guard, Cosme can play right. If you need a tackle, like, Cosme's a really good football player. I know that's going to be less than ideal for him, but I actually think that that's your group, honestly. Like, those 9 guys, and I think they try to get Scott to the practice squad. I think they try to get Montero to practice squad. I think those other 2 young guys, Brooks and Jones Smith, the guys we've been talking about quite a bit, I think both those guys are practice squad guys, and I think there's your 4 practice squad guys right there, and maybe Larson if you're really feeling really froggy. So 5 guys on practice squad, which seems like kind of holding with tradition. So these 9 active, those 5 to practice squad, and I think you feel pretty gosh darn good about that, honestly.
Yep, and we'll see how they play. This could all change with really good or really poor performances on Saturday. They'll all be playing, which is kind of the fun of preseason, and we'll see how that goes, and then do our roster projection next week. Full thoughts on practice and kind of the preparation for this final preseason game coming up on the full edition of the pod. We will see you then on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.